Is it me or did I just experience a glitch in the matrix? Husband glitched into home office. This happened a few months ago. My husband has been working remotely from home since beginning of COVID. We live in an old farmhouse. The front door and side door are both located in the kitchen. To get in or out of the house, you have to walk through both the kitchen and living room. I woke up one morning, made a cup of coffee and sat on the edge of the couch to watch the news and weather. Husband walks out of our bedroom, past me in the living room and into the kitchen, turns to tell me he is going to set the trash out by the curb for pickup. He walks outside to take out the trash. A half hour goes by. I had been sitting in the same spot waiting for him to return because I had to ask him a question about our dog's vet APPT. I realize a half hour might seem like a while to wait for him to come back in from taking the trash out, but we have acreage and it's not unlike him to get distracted by something else or play fetch with dogs for a little bit. I decide to call his phone to see when he was coming back inside. He answers and says he is already in his office working. Excuse me? He would have to walk directly past me again to get into his office from being outside. He definitely did not. I walked back to his office and there he was, typing away on his computer. He asks me where I had gone and says I wasn't in the living room, where I had been sitting drinking my coffee the entire time, when he came back in from taking out the trash. I've gone over this probably a million times in my head and there is no explanation for what happened other than a glitch or something like that. TLDR. Husband glitched from taking trash outside to being back inside in his office. It seemed to that is more likely that you went into another dimension and your husband didn't see you. Do you ever feel like you have lost time? Have you felt like little time have passed but in reality is much more? Have you ever seen UFOs or felt a presence while sleeping? Yes to all of your questions except I've never seen a UFO. Now that you mention it, my husband says it was more like an hour that passed, from time he went outside to take trash to time I walked into his office, and I swear it wasn't more than a half hour tops. Also, since we moved into this house I have always felt something was off here. I went as far as smudging the house with sage multiple times. I kept feeling like someone was watching me sleep. Could be carbon monoxide poisoning? Do you have alarms for that in your house? We have multiple carbon monoxide detectors in the house. Interesting thought though. Before we moved in, we had to have all of the gas lines in the house redone as they were very outdated and leaking so badly that the gas company wouldn't turn our gas on because it wasn't safe. Honestly, not sure how the previous owners survived. When COVID started, I stayed with my sister-in-law for a while. It's funny because to get from any room in the back of the house, or to leave out the front or side door, you have to walk through their small living room. I would walk right in front of her while she watched TV. I guess she was really into whatever she was watching because multiple times with me and my brother, she'd notice we were in the front of the house and then be surprised that we were in the back, or vice versa, when we'd walk right in front of her. My brother would come in from smoking outside, walk in front of her to their bedroom to lay down, and she'd text him asking him when he was going to come inside. Lol. You didn't walk in front of me. I never saw you go by. I'd seen him but apparently her brain tuned him out. Maybe you just tuned each other out because you were on autopilot? Strange that he didn't see you there on the couch though. Super weird for sure. I agree that I could have zoned out, but what makes it weird is that we both zoned out. I dunno. One of those unsolved mysteries. I experienced a very similar thing with my friends. I had 4 friends pick me up at my condo recently, and there is only one narrow entryway into the condo parking lot. My friends were taking a long time, so instead of waiting at home, I decided to walk to the parking entry. There is only one entry. I texted them that I am waiting at the entry, and they said they'll be there in 2 minutes. 5 minutes later, I get a call from my friends saying they've parked at the parking lot but they don't see me. I was baffled. I stood at the only place they could have entered from, but I didn't see a single car turning in. My friends were spooked as well. They knew where I was waiting for them and was deliberately on the lookout for me. They didn't see me when their car was turning in and they were very confused. The entire gate is very narrow. If they passed me, they would have been less than 1 meter away from me. I don't know how we could have missed each other like this, and I am convinced they teleported straight into the parking lot. Boys walked into an elevator and disappeared. Long story short, my wife passed away in 2011 from multiple forms of cancer. Towards the end of her battle, we were staying at an extended stay type of hotel near the hospital. It made it easy for us to get her chemo and radiation without having to travel long distances. When we were walking down the hallway at this hotel, which many others had likely stayed at due to medical issues, we turned the corner. There were two young boys, both in swim-type clothing with a towel over their shoulder. Probably 8/9 of a year old. They were about 50 feet in front of us. They approached the elevator and went inside. The doors closed and we figured we would wait for the next one. We walked up and pressed the button on the door and it immediately popped open. With no one inside, there was no way it had any time to travel anywhere and return that quickly. We looked at each other in shock and couldn't fathom how this happened or where the boys went. It's bothered me to this day. Have you shared this story here before? Perhaps someone else has. I have read your statement verbatim within the last 2 years. The comments are similar, but the post is identical. My wife passed 2019. I have quietly grieved with anyone who mentions a spousal loss. I remember reading this verbatim. I remember the story you're speaking of. It was written from the perspective of the boys, or maybe just one boy. I don't remember exactly. He left the pool area to get a towel from their room B. C. He had forgotten one or something. He got back in the same elevator, but it was dry when it should have been wet from him dripping. When he got back, the family said he was gone for an hour or extended period of time, even though it was 5 minutes to him. They had been looking for him in the room, elevator, and hallways. Does that seem right? Memory is a little fuzzy. It was a couple of years ago. You have excellent memory. I remember that story now that you've done a quick retelling. I wonder if that's the one they're thinking of. My memory is shot, but when I read OP's post, something just clicked. Yo WTF, I think all this carrot is potentially a glitch happening right now. Sorry about your wife. If there's really no way the boys could have gotten out at the next floor, a super fast elevator, maybe. The hotel may be haunted. As you mentioned, a lot of people who stay there are in crisis situations and possibly facing their own death or the death of someone close. That kind of intense energy may leave an imprint or linger for a while. Alternatively, maybe the timeline wobbled and you got a glimpse of hotel guests from the past or future. Ooh man, haunted as a thought. Google around. Call papers and authorities and find out if 2 boys ever drowned in the pool. If so, good idea. It's also possible that one or both died of cancer. There was an elevator ghost at a former workplace of mine. I saw her twice. Same situation as you. Saw someone go in the elevator and the doors close, pressed the button and the doors immediately opened to an empty elevator. I encountered her while with a coworker the first time and we puzzled over it for a couple of days. Around a year later, another coworker saw her and was terrified. The story spread and people started sharing identical stories. Petite, dark-haired woman, only ever seen entering an elevator. There have actually been several stories around elevators on Reddit. The one that people seem to be referring to is that of a young girl who vanished for some time after taking the elevator up to her room. The family weren't there, but a strange old lady was. Then she went back down and was found by police and others who had been looking for her for an hour or so. Knocked down by something unseen. So this happened 18 years ago, but I remember it like it happened 5 minutes ago. I was walking home from work with my then brother-in-law and we was just walking and talking when all of a sudden I felt something hit my forehead hard and it knocked me back a few steps and then I landed on my butt. Sean was still talking to me but looked over and seen that I was on the ground, so he was like, WTF just happened? He said I was there 1 second and the next it was like I was being pushed backwards. We looked everywhere for something that could have fall from the sky, but there was nothing around. I also had a huge knot on my forehead, so we knew something had hit me. So we get home and before I can even tell anyone what happened, my mother-in-law told me that I needed to call my twin sister because she had just called really upset and crying. So I call her and she tells me that her then boyfriend had just beat the crap out of her about 45 minutes ago, same time that happened to me, and that he had stomped on her forehead with his boots on. When she told me this, I just looked at Sean like, what the hell is really going on? So I told my sister what had happened to me and she was just as shocked as I was. This isn't the only time that we have had something like this happen to us. We somehow almost always know when something bad has happened to the other. This happened to me once. I was crossing the street and something pushed me very hard and I stumbled forward a few steps and fell. At the same time, a car had crossed the red light and would have hit me if I didn't get pushed. I swear to God by this and totally believe something supernatural happened. I hope your sister is okay now. Holy $%. This is exactly something that happened to me when I was 12. Could you tell more? Sure, I grew up on a busy street with a small arc, and at the peak of this arc was my house. So crossing the street there was like a small blind spot, so I had to be really careful when crossing. There were literally no crosswalk or sidewalks. I was taking guitar lessons at a nearby music store, and my mother would watch me cross the street from the house because she knew how dangerous it could be. Anyway, this one day I was crossing with my guitar in a case. I looked both ways several times and it was clear. Then out of nowhere in the middle of crossing I feel this push and my guitar goes flying out of my hands, and both me and TBE guitar landed to the other side of TBE street. I remember standing up like WTF just happened. I brushed myself off, picked up my guitar and continued to my lesson. When I got home my mother was freaking out. She said a Corvette went speeding up the arc and it looked like I threw the guitar, but my body looked like I had been pushed because I like flew across the street. My mom said I had an angel on my shoulder. So you better believe the first tattoo I got at age 20 was an angel on my shoulder with a guitar. Happened to me too. Crossing the street, car was about to hit me, felt like I was shoved from behind. Fell flat on my face. Made no sense if the car hit me. Shouldn't have went straight forward. I was 14. Wow, and there was no people around that could have done this pushing? Not unless they wanted to die too. But to answer simply, no one. Dozens of people even witnessed it from their cars and from a distance, as they were all stopped at a light. But I ended up flat on my face with the closest person to me, some guy in a car, asking if I was okay. Wow, incredible. Glad that you were saved though. Maybe guardian angel or your future self came back cloaked and gave you a good push that day. Reminds me of a car accident I had a few years ago. Didn't hit anyone else, nobody was hurt. I was driving up the interstate in the rain when suddenly the steering wheel jerked violently out of my hands, sending me spinning around and around until I was able to control the spin enough to slide rear first down the center bank and into the ditch there. Brand new tires, did not hydroplane, no potholes, nothing broken on the car. Took a long time before I wasn't terrified to drive in the rain after that. I was on my way to a party where a lot of irresponsible decisions would undoubtedly been made. I think it was a lifesaver TBH. Wow. I 100% believe this was due to the psychic connection you have with your twin. One of my closest friends has a twin brother, and after they get into bad fights she'd avoid contacting him for a while. During this period of not talking, her twin would get really sick with vertigo, aches and migraines to the point where he has to take time off work, and their mother would have to interfere and ask my friend to reach out and make things right with her brother because it's making him sick. As soon as they make up, he's completely better. Teleportation glitch with 4 witnesses. Happened in Melbourne on a Saturday night. Me and 4 male friends became friends with 3 guys in a bar. We left the guys and then continued to walk to another club. Approximately 300 meters or so we saw the same 3 guys across the road walking in the complete opposite direction to the club we were heading to. As soon as we got to the club, we immediately got inside, no line or anything. The club was extremely packed. Instantly as we walk inside we look to the stage, and the same 3 guys we saw walking away in the opposite direction were up on the stage dancing. They were dancing with a demeanor as if they'd been there for a while. The speed in which we were walking towards the club and got inside made it impossible, even if these guys turned around and ran to the club to beat us to get to that position on the stage through the busy crowd. All 4 of us absolutely gobsmacked. Should have asked them what happened. They teleported as far as we were concerned. Not physically achievable what happened. Also, we are certain in both scenarios who we saw walking in the club. You said you became friends. What did you talk to them about? Did they, by any chance, act odd? I'm curious if those 3 guys are telling the same story of the group of 4. It's interesting you say this, as I don't remember the conversation, but we did think they were very weird guys. What? Didn't you ask them about the teleport shit? Seuss? No, the club was stupidly packed. We were on holiday and wanted to go somewhere fun, so left immediately. After we left we realized the extent of the glitch. Believe what you like. Probably a case of mistaken identity. This is what I assume. Not trying to generalize, but a lot of younger men have similar haircuts and wear similar fashion, as it is with every generation. Good chance if you're hanging out in a bar, drinks are being had, and if the area is populated enough that there are multiple clubs within walking distance, stands to reason it was mistaken identity. Mistaken identity and time loss due to alcohol. This reminds me of a YouTube video I saw ages ago. The guy said he'd been out clubbing and he kept seeing the same man in different streets clubs, in ways that would have been impossible due to time and the direction of travel. He attributed it to a phi phenomenon IIRC, the ghillie do. You say they struck you as very weird guys, and clearly they were pretty memorable. What was weird about them, would you say? Sounds like you jumped to a different timeline. While I'd love to elaborate on what I mean by that, it's much easier to recommend reading up on our Neville Goddard teachings. Can't recommend Neville Goddard enough. It's helped me make sense of the glitches I've experienced as well as many other strange occurrences. I agree with earlier comments. It can just as easily be explained as mistaken identity and time loss from alcohol. It's pretty common. Op says they left immediately and identities were confirmed. This is a glitch in the Matrix thread. Things happen we cannot explain. Sure. Throw in a reasonable suggestion, but you can't deny strange things that happen to others. My suggestion: check out a sub that discusses multiple realities and how we navigate through them from within. Your Faith is Your Fortune by Neville Goddard is a great starting point material-wise and can be found for free online. Cheers. Happy birthday from a stranger. I'm not sure if this qualifies as a glitch, per se. A few months ago, my so and I were out celebrating my b-day. Two homeless drifters came walking along as we exited our hotel to the main street sidewalk. One of the drifters looked directly at me and randomly said, "Happy birthday," as he casually strolled down the sidewalk. At the time I wasn't wearing anything that could have indicated that it was my birthday, and I had not come across those individuals in the hotel. My so and I were and are still baffled, intrigued about the encounter. It could have been a coincidence for all I know, but the chances of that seem slim. Surprised at how this got attention. Thanks for the awards, and I have enjoyed all of your responses. I have also been very skeptical about my encounter and considered the variety of possible, logical explanations. I'm not attempting to convince anyone of anything. For context, I'd like to add that my so and I were not the only people on the sidewalk. There were other groups of people walking about when this happened, so plenty of other people that this man could have greeted these drifters did not seem to be in a typical headspace. They seem to be in their own world. A part of me feels like chalking it up to just a happening of chance, but I really want to believe that the encounter was something beyond reason. I can just imagine. So, Spud, why do you say happy birthday to just about everyone? Well, I guess it's fun to think that I've got a 1 in 365 chance of freaking someone out. I think he probably says, happy birthday, to everyone thinking that if he ever hits he might get a handout, better handout. Maybe. Although, despite making light of it, I do think there's something to this. What stands out for me is that this person looks straight at the op, not at their partner. This makes me wonder if the drifter had some sort of psychic ability. The only explanation I can think of is that the drifter had earlier overheard a conversation before crossing paths with them later. Perhaps the couple were talking about a birthday treat as they first entered the hotel and this was overheard. One time I was in a Whataburger and there was a seemingly homeless man in there. I think he had some form of schizophrenia. Anyway, he began to rattle off my current life situation and some other things I never told anyone. He did this with everyone in the restaurant. Anyway, my point is that I think some of these people on the streets and/or people with so-called mental disorders, schizo, are actually just more in touch with the unseen, psychic realms than what is normal. And it makes it difficult to function in what we consider normal society. Also, I would like to add that I had what was diagnosed as a psychotic episode several years back. While I am sure my behavior didn't seem normal, I was actually able to very accurately predict soon-to-be pregnancies. My hand-eye coordination was off the charts. I could sense energetic fields around me, among other things. The so-called psychosis actually was me tapping into some extrasensory realm that we're typically not used to experiencing. So I would actually have to say it's not a glitch per se, but just a level of perception that isn't experienced by most people at the moment. I've think this, too, and discussed it with a very psychic young woman who struggles with bipolar disorder. She's extremely intelligent and she's convinced that her mental illness and psychic abilities are connected. The poet Neil Hilborn, who also has bipolar disorder, has alluded to the same thing. In his poem, The Future, you can see him deliver it on YouTube. He says, "Once I pulled over on the 110 freeway and jumped out of my old Jeep because I saw it burst into flames 20 seconds before it actually burst into flames. I've been a server or bartender for the last 10 plus. A few years ago I was waiting tables, and a couple got up to leave, not my table, and I tried to say, "Have a nice day." Instead I said, "Happy birthday." I followed with, "Oh, that was weird and not what I meant to say." One of them said, "But it is my birthday." "How do you know?" I even asked to see his ID because I thought he was screwing with me. Sometimes people who know people just know, and throughout the years have said the right thing at the right time through no fault of my own. I've chalked it up to more our interconnection than a glitch. Sometime your energy is so big that others just hear you without you speaking. I agree, it's more a matter of energy and perhaps telepathy and other connections between people. Reddit would probably class it as paranormal, but I am inclined to think it perfectly normal. One time my mom and I were out having breakfast. While we were sitting and eating, this man I've never met came up to us and told me he hoped he wasn't bothering me but that he felt he had to give me a message. The message being that I was about to experience a whole new level of freedom in my life. I was shocked, because I had just broken up with the guy the first had been with for over a decade, and he was getting ready to move out, and I'd finally be on my own. Me and my mom both thought it was crazy because it was so accurate. And I'm the only one this guy came up to in the restaurant. He wasn't just going around harassing people and being weird. That was several years ago and I still think about it. I believe you. Some years ago my mom was sitting on a bar having some breakfast and a stranger approached her and thanked her for taking such good care of the elderly and told her that she was very loved. She is a nurse assistant in a nursing home and no, she wasn't wearing any tag or uniform. She was in a city 40 minutes away from our town and she had never seen the man. He left after telling her that. I wonder if they're just regular human beings or something else. Yeah, it could have been something non-human disguised as one that knows what she does. That's pretty cool though for sure. Was thinking about this the other day. In the early 90s, I was living in northern VA. I came out of my apartment, and someone was putting flyers on the windshields of all the cars in the complex. As I walked toward my car, the guy was almost at my bumper. It was daylight, so there was no need to be overly cautious. I reached to take the flyer from him as I unlocked my car. As he handed it to me, he stopped and looked at me and said with a heavy accent, "You are very far from the man that you love." As it happens, I was in a long-distance relationship with the man who is now my husband. The flyer was for a psychic reader. I don't think there was anything about me or my car that could have told him that. I didn't have any bumper stickers, and I never really wore clothing with logos, meaning I wasn't wearing anything that indicated I visited or was from another region. I bought the car locally, and it had VA plates and the tax sticker on the windshield. So strange. As I stood there with my mouth open, he pressed the flyer in my hands and said, "You come see my sister." I know people who claim to have such powers are really good at asking questions or making statements that seem really specific and personal that in truth could apply to a lot of people, but that one was a home run. But did you go to his sister? Haha, good question. No. Devout Catholic here. That means I believe there is a lot about the universe that is beyond our comprehension. That also means I was taught not to mess with it. I believe it's possible for people to know things they shouldn't, but we don't always know where that knowledge comes from, so it's best to steer clear. I've had plenty of unexplainable experiences, but it's best not to seek them. A strange glitch in time. I live in a small town surrounded by other small towns. Larger cities are 2+ hours away. My mother and I would always go to doctor's appointments a town over. We have small towns in close proximity, but this one is an hour and a half away and there is no town in between, only desert and oilfield sites. Usually, we would leave the house 2 hours before our appointment and then we would grab Starbucks since all our appointments would be early mornings. It's just a little tradition we have. Anyways, we had been going back and forth for weekly to bi-weekly appointments for about a year at this point. We had an appointment at 9 a.m. so that meant at 7 a.m. we needed to be in the car leaving the house. We got a late start and didn't end up leaving until around 8 a.m. We had to stop to get gas or something like that. We didn't end up getting Starbucks and just headed on the road. We were speeding but not a crazy amount because there are occasional state troopers and traffic cops. We always listen to music on our way up there. We turn the music up pretty loud and, probably, terribly sing our hearts out. This time was no different. However, it was strange because we hit a random dead zone with no service and that had never happened before and hasn't happened since. With the silence from there being no music, we were talking about calling the office and telling them we would be late for our appointment when all of a sudden the car just goes dark. All of the lights on the dashboard just simply aren't lit, and then it says low fuel even though filling the car was part of what had made us late in the first place. We didn't talk, we just kind of both looked at each other with confusion and then didn't say much when the dash lights came back on. The music followed shortly after, and then the entrance to the town was right ahead of us. We had arrived in what felt like 30 minutes and we didn't really remember much of the drive, like at all. I looked down at my phone to see the time was only 7 a.m. What? We hadn't even left until 8 a.m. We checked her phone, 7 a.m. The time in the car said 7 a.m. I called my dad and it was in fact 7 a.m. There's no possible way we left at 5:30 in the morning because it would have still been dark, or at least fairly dark, where I live anyways. I would also like to note that our vehicle clock does not change time when we travel, even across multiple time zones. There is no time zone change between the towns we were going to, and even at that we both had our phones and we were checking the time a lot at first, debating if we were going to make it. The gas now was also back to almost completely full, and we usually use more gas than what we had. The car was pretty much brand new and there has never been an issue, neither in the past nor present, with it reading the capacity of gas. We acknowledged how weird it was and then spent the time we had getting food and going to the few stores that were open. We went to our appointment when it was time and then went home. I brought up this story to her last week to see if she remembers it the same, and she does. I still can't come up with a logical explanation no matter how much I think about it. I call it the Twilight Zone. It has happened to me 3 times, each with different people. The first time, my BF and I were returning from Florida. We pulled into the gas station and I pointed the car the same direction we were headed. We get stuff and get in the car, and nearly a half hour had passed when we noticed we were headed south. Took a few minutes to get turned around and we head back homeward again. We passed the gas station again, and when I look at the clock, barely a few minutes had passed. WTF? Second time I was taking my kiddo to a doc APPT that was about an hour away. We got kinda lost finding it, so I made sure I knew which way to go when we left. And sure as shit, we are riding about an hour and we see we are headed south. We turn around and yes, I was a little speedy. I was determined to see how much time I had lost, and never passed the office again. WTF? And here I mention these happened on the same highway, within the same 50 miles of each other. The last time this happened, Mom and I were headed home and I had GPS in the car. We got lost and the GPS had us going in these weird, not circles, but triangles. We would come back on the same roads in different places and never crossed the same section of road. IDK what was going on, but it has happened to me too. You are not alone. Sounds like you found yourself in West Central Louisiana. All joking aside, can relate. I wouldn't have been surprised if I wound up in a different state. Lol. Long haul trucker here. Sounds like what you experienced was an altered state of mind caused by road hypnosis. Happens to people all the time. Unfortunately, some people don't survive the experience. Those who do, chalk it up to some paranormal phenomenon. Here's a list of altered states of consciousness that can be caused by road hypnosis in conjunction with sleeplessness and long bouts of traveling. Memory loss, sleepwalking, automatic driving, deep and irrational fear, i.e., spooky feeling, fear of an unfamiliar place, morphing shadows, hypnagogic hallucinations, a. seeing shadows, hearing your name, seeing random faces, intrusive thoughts, full-on hallucinations, phosphenes, religious experiences, optical illusions, visual cortex disturbances, selective and transient cognitive impairment, a. brain shutting down in parts, intense liminal space effects, extreme feelings of sensuct, and so on. I'm curious as to how that would happen to both of them though. Mass psychogenic illness. Many documented cases of people experiencing the same altered types of consciousness at the same time. It's not even that surprising. Just look at human thought and dreams. Archetypes are present everywhere. These time glitches are very intriguing. I listen to the Paranormal Podcast and also Jim Harold's Campfire and recommend both. There was one story of a truck driver that had to drive back and forth on the same route day after day to make a delivery and pickup. He was very familiar with the route and knew the scenery, such as towns he passed through and exactly how long the route took to drive. He was on his daily run and wasn't paying too much attention, as you often do when driving, but started to notice that on the side of the freeway towns seemed to be missing and the landscape looked a little different. He started paying more attention and said he started to see some homes and farms where there should have been major population centers with people in clothes you would expect to see a century or more ago. Even seeing horse-driven buggies and then more sparse lands with nothing where there should have been a lot more buildings based on the miles he had driven. He said at that point he was freaked out and didn't know what to do except to keep driving as he didn't want to pull over and get stuck in the twilight zone. At one point things started looking normal again and he reached his destination and everything was completely normal with the exception he was several hours late. But he hadn't stopped at any point on his trip. The time was simply lost with no explanation. He said it only happened that one time. This is classic alien abduction. When they take you, they bring you back close to the same time, 3 to 4 hours late, or even before you even left. They can play with time that way. The car going dead is not because they have a way to turn it off, but because they bring you outside of time, where everything is paused. Machines don't work in that state, only consciousness does. If you want more answers, you will need to do a hypnosis session. My asthma puffer duplicated itself. The other night I went and watched a show with my sister. I took my little Louis Vuitton pochette-style purse which is pretty tiny and only holds phone, wallet and keys, although I always try and jam my asthma puffer in there. Because of the severity of my condition, I need to carry medication on me at all times. Doing so causes my purse not to clasp because the puffer is bulky, so I tell you now that jamming even one puffer in is already damn well pushing it. So in the Uber on the way to the show, we took a sharp turn and my items fell out of my purse. I felt around the seat and popped everything back in. When we arrived at the show I thanked the Uber driver and he left. So then my sister and I were waiting in line to head into the theater and the Uber driver comes back 2 minutes later to where I was in line, wound his window down, handed me a puffer and said, "You dropped this." I thanked him and then realized I had already put my puffer back in my purse. I compared them and they had the same batch number and the same older Ventolin design without the new design feature of the number of remaining doses left on the back, which is how the newer models come now. I only have one older model puffer left, which is the one I packed. The rest have the new feature. This scenario blows my mind. I know there's crazy glitches going on as people are reporting other things duplicating. Edit. To the people giving me a hard time, I'm happy to point out that puffers do have differences on the inside but are exactly the same on the outside as I provided in my images in my profile. Logically speaking, the best reasoning behind this could be that the stranger before me in the Uber dropped their same model of puffer in the same seat, which so happened to be extremely similar to the version and model I brought with me that night. Even with the most logical answer, it shows how fricking amazing the universe is. I mean, think about all the different variables with the specific Uber brand of puffer, Ventolin. When there are so many types and brands of inhalers, the fact that neither had a name label on them, neither were the newer model of Ventolin with the dosage meter on the back, the fact that I dropped the items in my purse, and the same thing must have happened with the person before me. Even with logic behind it, I think it's a beautiful moment of chance and coincidence. Isn't this what this sub is all about? I've had a shirt duplicate a couple of weeks ago. I was wearing it when I found the copy on the wardrobe, and my boyfriend and I only remember having one of that shirt. It's crazy the amount of items people are reporting duplicating. I'm nearly convinced we are currently surrounded by alternate timelines, and sometimes items jump. I wonder if sometimes when items go missing it's us experiencing the other side of this phenomenon. Hope alternate. Me is enjoying all the extra socks she gets. Somewhere is a universe drowning in my hair ties. You stated the Uber driver turned a corner rather quickly and maybe a previous passenger lost their puffer and so you now are breathing on your puffer and theirs as well. They just happened to be in line before you 15 minutes before you bought yours and purchased their puffer before you did so. The lot numbers might be the same or follow that train of thought. They generally have the name of the person the prescription is for on the prescription label with the prescribing doctor's name. At least this is the case in Canada. So if it duplicated it would have the same information exactly. But if the name is not the same then I'd say you're correct. Here in the US all the identifying info is often on the bag the medication comes in. My puffers came with my info on the bag but the actual puffer looked identical to anyone's using the same brand. Same for my BC2. It might just be a coincidence that the two puffers got knocked in the same cab and ended up with up. When I was a kid I had a little stuffed hermit crab toy that I'd sleep with every night. One night he fell off my bed and when I woke up in the morning I went under my bed to grab him and he had duplicated. Two identical little hermit crabs under my bed lol. Had them both for years. I like to look at this. You in another universe just lost her asthma puffer in an Uber. That's interesting. I had a small pair of folding personal scissors that duplicated on my bedside table a couple years ago. Legit, everyone in the house was acting like I was having a schizophrenic episode or something, yet offered no explanation as to why or how there were suddenly two pairs of very unique looking folding scissors in my possession. Round a week or two later, everyone, even my so who shared a room with me, just completely forgot, and I still have both pairs laying in storage somewhere, so I know I'm not just making this up. Still kinda freaks me out to think about. The only realistic explanations I can think of are either depressing or terrifying. The old oak swing. I just found out there's a Reddit for this, and I thought I'd post this story because I've literally been sitting on it for about 5 years now, not knowing what to make of it. A little backstory, if you will. My grandparents have lived in the same house since 1962 and actually still live there to this day. They have a big live oak tree out in the front yard. Now here's the weird part. It had an old swing in it that I know for a fact my grandpa had built, or at least that's what I was told as a kid. When I was a kid, I would lay in the hallway of their house and play with blocks and Barbies, etc. Well, they had this great big shelf at the end of the hall with knickknacks, pictures, candles, that sort of thing. On the bottom shelf were these old picture albums I used to love looking at. It had their wedding pictures, old photos of my dad as a kid. But most specifically, there was a picture of my dad at about 2 years old sitting on my aunt's lap on that swing and my uncle standing off to the side. My dad was born in 1963, so this picture would have been from like 1965-ish. This is important. I loved that picture. Anyways, I swung on that swing as a child. I played with my cousins out on that swing. I even fell off this thing as a child and cut up my elbow pretty good. I go on to have my first child and he loves playing on the swing too, so it was our little routine. We would go in and visit grandma and grandpa and he could swing for a bit when we went to leave. One day I show up to my grandparents to visit and notice the swing's gone. No big deal, but I mentioned it to them when I got inside. Me. What happened to the swing, grandma? Her. What swing? At this point I'm laughing. Like, hello, the swing from your front yard that's been there for like 60 years. My grandma is not laughing, she's seriously so confused. I chalked it up to old age and moved on. Then I was talking to my dad a day or two later on the phone and told him I thought grandma's memory was going and told him about the swing situation, and he's like, what swing? Now I'm starting to think these people are messing with me. I called up my cousin Faith, what swing? Then it dawns on me, the photo album. I'm about to have photographic evidence to ruin their little joke. So I got to grandma's and pull out the album I knew the picture was in. Mind you, this thing has like an inch thick layer of dust on it and doesn't look like anyone's touched it in 10 years. The photo is freaking gone. My son, granted, was only 3.5, doesn't know what I'm talking about either, despite just playing on it like 4 or 5 days ago. Please tell me I'm not crazy and this is some glitch, but even if it is a glitch, it makes no sense. Something as small as an old wooden swing, like why? My oldest son is 8 now, so I've been thinking about this for like 5 years with absolutely no valid explanation. This story gave me goosebumps, but my only possible thought moving forward is that you ought to build the exact swing and hang it up there for future generations to make memories. My husband and I just purchased our first house in December, and oddly enough it has the exact same type of swing. I think maybe that's what drew me to this house even more, but still weird how things work out. Talk out loud to your simulators and thank them for their prank. That's what they do for fun, and don't take it personally. But how is it possible that I am literally the only one that remembers the swing? If it was a glitch, wouldn't the swing physically be gone, but everyone else should at least still remember it too, right? Edit. Double word. I think when glitches occur, you just completely switch into a different reality. Honestly, this stuff is freaky and I don't think we can comprehend it. Have you heard of the Mandela effect? It's where some people have specific memories about stuff that don't correlate with what most others remember. It's been theorized that we have multiple universes. Each universe has a copy of everyone, yet things are different in small to large ways in each universe due to choices that are made by individuals. It's also theorized that a person could be moved to a different universe, without their knowledge, if they die or any sort of major anomaly occurs. Did you have any close calls or accidents lately? If you lend any belief to these theories, then it's possible you might have died and your soul moved to a different universe where the tree swing didn't exist. Crazy, I know. Food for thought though. You said you cut up your elbow pretty bad on the swing. Did it scar? And if so, do you still have the scar? If you have the scar, ask your parents how they think you got it. No, it didn't scar. My mom unfortunately passed away, so I can't ask her, but my dad said he doesn't remember that. Even though I can distinctly remember running inside crying in the burning sensation when my mom cleaned it up and poured iodine on it. Sorry for your loss, sad face. I was just thinking a scar is hard to argue away, you know? Thank you. Yes, it would definitely be hard to explain away a scar. It's just crazy to me that I have so many vivid memories on this swing, with people I've known my whole life and none of them remember. It's like a piece of my life just no longer exists, if that makes sense. Your child being 3.5 would totally remember the swing, especially if you said it was routine. At that age, they don't easily forget pleasant things like that. Just saying. The fact he is so young doesn't matter because he wouldn't forget the simple concept of a swing that easily. He's 8 now, but the swing disappeared when he was 3.5, and that's kind of my point. He was just on that swing like 4 days before it vanished and no one suddenly remembered it anymore. It was routine. He would beg to go swing when we were leaving even if it was pouring rain, so the fact that he never mentioned it again or protested to swing when leaving again tells me he has definitely forgot like everyone else. Exactly. I have 2 toddler grand girls. We have a swing set, but it's not set into the ground and we carry it to behind the house when the girls aren't here to visit. One of the girls is 2 and the other 4, and they do not forget we own those swings ever lol. They can't see them when they walk up and instantly ask where they are. Where's my park? And me and Grandpa gotta haul it out for them. It's just a small one for a small lot yard, so easy to move with 2 people, but seriously, they do not forget. Sometimes Google Maps has old renderings still up. My childhood home is pictured as it was about 10 years ago. Have you tried looking up their house on there and seeing if the swing is pictured? That was a good idea, thanks for the suggestion. Unfortunately, no swing, and the Google watermark says 2019. It would have been fallish of 2017 when the swing disappeared. On a Twitter thread not too long ago, people were posting street views of their childhood homes with their deceased parents, siblings, pets, etc. still living on through Google Maps, and some people mentioned how there's a way to find old street views. I would definitely look into if I were you. These are always puzzlers. I tend to put them down to people being bored and wanting to talk, because of course I don't know you. It's the only logical thing to think, and in many cases is true. I have made a bit of a study of this, and every time someone pops up and says they lost some time or went 2 routes, I offer privately to help analyze their phone data. I work on forensic phone data, and so it's easy enough to rebuild a timeline. The interesting fact is that never once has anyone taken the offer up. I mean, if I experienced traveling a route that didn't exist, then I would love to validate that one way or the other, but no. Now these people always go silent, make an excuse, whatever. This unfortunately makes me very cynical about their motivations. I even offer to tell them how to do it, once I started getting rejections. All this is a long preamble to point out that I think a lot of people on here tell these stories for different reasons, and mostly they are stories. The alternative would be a sudden mass proliferation of strange events. Now, all this said, your story does appear truthful. It's such an odd thing. The fact it happened long ago makes it a little tricky, but let's see anyway. I am a really great believer in data, and in this world we have a lot of data. So, chasing my dreams again, can I ask, is the tree visible from the road at all? If so, could we look it up on Street View? Did you ever take a photo of the tree swing? With your daughter perhaps? Did anyone take a photo of something nearby and the swing would be in the photo? I'm imagining the swing is on a tree out in front of the house, so most photos of the house would have the tree in, but maybe I have the wrong image of this. If you could give a little info please, because it may well be possible to find some trace of the swing. I assume you checked your own pictures? Knowing where the tree and swing were in relation to the house would be very helpful. Magic wedding ring. So, it's been 10+ years, and we still haven't figured this one out. We do tell this story constantly, and no one has ever come up with a plausible solution. Right after we got married in June 2010, my husband wore his wedding ring to work. At the time, he was working in a big box store's distribution center about 35 miles from our home, working the night shift. He's had a week to get used to wearing it, and he didn't have any issues at work that day with the ring getting in the way. We worried about that. I was afraid he'd lose or break it. At the end of the shift, He went to the bathroom to wash all the black off his hands. He took the ring off, scrubbed it, set it on the right side of the sink, and washed his hands. While doing so, a friend came in and washed his hands on his left side and congratulated him on his wedding, etc., and they walked out together, leaving the ring on the edge of the sink. On the way home, he had his hand out the window, tapping his hand on the side of the car to the music when he realized there was no clinking. He pulled over and checked his keyclip, his pockets, socks, shoes. At the time, he basically wore a t-shirt and gym shorts to work every day, so there was little chance he could miss it anywhere. He called back to work and they checked the restroom to no avail. It was gone. When he got home that night, we checked everything again. He said he remembered setting it down but knew he hadn't picked it up. We made flyers and word was spread through the warehouse, but there was nothing about the ring. It never turned up. We checked the pawn shops around town, nothing. It's simply gone. A year and a half later, our 3-year-old daughter was playing in a spare bedroom, and she came out chattering away and waving her finger at us. Around her finger was my husband's wedding ring. We have no idea how it got home. When she showed us where she found the ring, it was on the floor in the back of the closet, under boxes. This was the winter coat's closet too, nothing that would have had any interaction with him or the ring. It was June when he lost it, so he wasn't wearing a jacket. He worked in a t-shirt and gym shorts, with socks and sneakers. He thought perhaps I'd had another one made and was trying to be slick, but he noticed there was a gash in the Celtic knot pattern that he hadn't told me about, so it had to be the real thing. TL. My husband left his ring at work, 35 miles from home. 3-year-old daughter produced it at home a year later like magic. Something very similar happened to my mother. She had a scarab beetle necklace, given to her from Egypt by an old acquaintance. One day she wore it out and came home, and that evening when she was taking off her jewelry, it was gone. We looked high and low for that necklace. Flash to the following summer. She's at the family cottage 4 hours away, for the first time that season, taking old linen out of the bottom drawer of a side table she hasn't accessed for ages. There, laid neatly in a straight line under the bottom quilt, was her scarab necklace. There is no plausible explanation. That's so awesome. Reminds me of something. My mom lost one of the diamonds in her wedding ring. It was big, about half a raisin size. We searched everywhere, couldn't find it. She ended up getting a new ring. BC to replace the diamond would be just as much as the new ring she wanted. We moved 2,000 miles away. The house we stayed in was temporary until the new one was finished being built. We moved into the new one, then another 2 years after that, then another about 3/4 of a year ago, 14 years after the third house. Hard to keep up with, I know. To simplify, we moved 4 times after the ring was lost. One day I saw the smallest sparkle in our fluffy carpet. The diamond was lost when I was 12. I found it when I was about 27, 2,000 miles from where it was lost, 4 houses later. Needless to say, I became the favorite child after that. LMAO. This happens. IDK what it is, but something about heirlooms or romantic pieces or something. Maybe the precious metals or stones themselves interact more easily with the next dimension. IDK. But my story is similar, not identical. I got a new necklace from my BF who got it from a shop in Iceland specifically for me. He said the lady selling was empathic and picked the stone for my energy. It was volcanic and would keep me grounded. I instantly adored this necklace, which is saying a lot since I don't wear much jewelry. It made me actually feel more confident and calm with it on, so I wore it everywhere for a few months. I was still wearing it when I went to visit my sisters who I hadn't seen in a while at the time. The first day we met up and checked into our hotel to get ready for dinner, but just as I was straightening my dress in the mirror, I felt a tug on the necklace chain. I thought it was caught, but then noticed there was nothing for it to have snagged on and no one was behind me. I then looked down and realized the stone charm was gone, but the necklace was still closed around my neck. I was baffled. It seemed super weird and I knew I had just had it because I touched it a lot and my sisters saw me wearing it. I immediately dropped down and searched all over the floors of the room for the charm, not that there was a lot of space for it to have gone. I found absolutely nothing. After moving the heavy dresser and even checking drawers we hadn't opened yet, all 3 of us were stumped and gave up. Every night for the rest of the week, we checked the floors and our bags and just everywhere for the charm to no avail. So a whole week goes by, and I am increasingly sad about not finding my necklace charm. I told my sisters and they knew to look out for it, but I had a flight and was leaving first, so I went to bed pretty early the last night. That very night I had the most vivid dream that I told my sister I had found the necklace and that it has just shown up back in our hotel room. I woke up thinking it was real and even woke my sister before heading to the airport to make sure it wasn't. She denied having seen it again, so I hugged her and left. I get to the airport and oddly enough, flights are all set back due to bad weather, and I can't get out till the next day, so I go back to the hotel to find my sister exactly where I left her, nothing different. I go back to my bedroom, set my purse down, and then another weird thing, my wallet goes flying seemingly out of nowhere. It hits the floor, all my cards explode out of it, and annoyed I go to get them all. One had went really far under, so I had to get on my belly to grab it. Just as it touched my hand, I saw a glint of red directly across from me on the carpet at the other side of the bed. It was my freaking necklace charm, right in the most obvious area, and nowhere near where I had been previously standing when it was lost. Even more oddly though, if it had been lying there all week, there is just no way we would not have seen it, stepped on it, etc. I had to then freak my sister out and ensure she never went into the room after I left, and to this SDH we just cannot explain how it fell off my closed necklace in the first place. My best theory is a mischievous child ghost though, because during my search I noticed the maid had a ridiculously full lost and found jewelry box, and she even said, "Yeah, trinkets tend to go missing here a lot." The end. Lol. This is more common of an occurrence than people realize. It also happened to me. My husband and I lived in a rural area of Virginia approximately 45 minutes away from Virginia Beach. We drove out to visit friends in VA Beach. My husband went into the store and bought snacks and party favors, and we went over to their apartment. We hung out for several hours, but once we picked up to leave, we realized we couldn't find my husband's wallet. We tore that apartment apart. We walked the street between the store and apartment. We even went into the store and the clerk said to my husband, "You mean that brown leather billfold?" "No man, no one brought it in." So defeated, we gave up and went home. We walked in the front door and the dog was standing at the back door wanting to go outside to potty. I went to the door to let her out, but before I even opened the door I noticed that sitting on the top step of the deck stairs was my husband's wallet. Like it had been there all along. After a plethora of cussing, we came to the conclusion there was literally no way for someone to bring the wallet home because we had it in our possession in the apartment, so it's not like it got dropped along the way. That house had a freaky vibe to begin with, but that just took the cake. You don't think it's possible one of the party guests stole it, felt guilty, so they returned it? None of the party guests left before we did. We were the first to go home. So, no, we definitely had it when we arrived, and unless they're Superman or have phenomenal cosmic powers, there's no way they could have gone to our home and made it back to the party. Lol. Also, nothing was stolen. I had something similar happen. I was wearing a bunch of rings one morning before school. I went to the bathroom to tie my hair up, but took my rings off and set them to the side so they don't get stuck in my hair. My mom called me over saying my breakfast is ready and she's heading out the door. I rushed downstairs, forgetting my rings. No one is home at this point. When I sat down at the table, I realized I forgot my rings. I ran back to the bathroom and realized my one black ring is gone. The other two were there. I was super weirded out, so I ate breakfast real fast and ran out the door. Fast forward about a year and a half, my mom and I are cleaning out a large ottoman that is stuffed with school papers, books, etc., not stacked, just stuff all around the place. We take everything out and at the bottom is my ring, perfectly centered. I started crying. Lol, there was no way it could have gotten there. We had something similar happen. I picked my daughter up from her dad's and she had a jacket tied around her waist. Hot pink on one side, silver on the other. We went several places, she got a bunch of compliments, people we saw daily saw her with the jacket on that day. Time comes for her to go back to her dad's, we search high and low, can't find her jacket. I literally turned my house upside down looking for it. Ran into those same people that previously saw her in it, still agreeing yes she had it on when with me, including her dad. She calls me from her dad's all freaked out because the jacket is now randomly hanging back in her bedroom closet, 40 miles away. I told her maybe her from a parallel universe borrowed it and just now returned it. Lol. Nice. You have made it to the end already. Thank you for watching. If you aren't already subscribed, please do so, as there will be more videos like this in the near future.